Hello and welcome to the Read Woke Book Club. This is our first meeting for the 21-22 school year. My name is Karen Lemmons. My co-presenter, Ms. Borum, could not join us today, but we have on our set the wonderful, the incredible, talented Mr. Chico, who is going to tell us about his book, Marcia's Sophomore Slump. Now, just to give you a little hint, if you have not read his first book, you need to pick up the first book. But he's going to tell you a little bit more about his first book and about this. So Chico, so talk a little bit about that first book and what even got you started about writing about Marcia.
So I started the first book summer of 2020, and I had an idea for a character. And the first book was mainly just to see if I could get it done, because I'd never written anything that large before. And in the first book, she's a freshman. She's forced out publicly by her political opponent. And so in her campaign speech, she gets on stage and she announces, yes, I'm gay. And some people take it well and some people don't. And so the rest of the first book is about how she deals with that and coming to grips with herself, her identity, that kind of thing. The first book is all about identity and understanding who we are and how we display that and express that to the world, and accepting ourselves and getting others to accept us for how we are. So the second book is her sophomore year, and that's more about the changes that we go through, right? So in the first book, not everything went right for her, but in the end, things worked out okay. She ended up winning the elections that she was running for. After a bad experience with a first crush, she ends up falling in love, and she's got a really good relationship going. Everything is really good at the end of the first book. And so for the second book, I wanted to see, it's about how we deal with challenges that come along, right?
Okay.
So things start to really go wrong for Marcia. She loses the election that she runs for. Not only loses, she finds out that she was kind of scammed out of it. Soccer is a big part of her life in the first book. She's a big soccer player. I wanted to take that away from her too. So she ends up getting injured. She loses that. Gets in fights with their girlfriend, things like that. And there's changes that she's having to deal with at her house as well, with her family. So the second book is all about that, about changes and things that we go, because that's such a big part of high school, right? Is finding out who we are, but then also dealing with the stuff that life hits us with.
Definitely. Okay, so we don't want to do a lot of spoilers, but there's a couple of characters that carried that in the first book that, of course, I do not like. And Chico and I had some discussion about how this one character has managed to redeem herself.
Okay, so in the first book, you've got Ashley Harwood, who is the bully, who's the main problem for most of what Marcia is going through in the first book. The first book didn't have a absolute antagonist, but Ashley was about as close to that. Originally, when I started the second book, my first thought was, okay, this is Ashley's chance to get revenge. So Ashley's going to hit her with it. And it wasn't until I was about halfway through with the book until I thought, you know what? What if it's not Ashley? What if it's somebody else? And then suddenly the book became a whole lot more interesting to me. And then the question became, so what do I do with Ashley then? So here's the thing with Ashley, okay? In the first book, she is a bigot, she is a racist, she is a giant bully, homophobic, the whole deal. And I've known people like that. The thing that I'm trying to show through Ashley is that that's taught, right? It's a learned thing.
Oh, okay.
Nobody is born being that way.
Okay.
And so a lot of her personality comes from her parents, and specifically her mom. And so by the end of the second book, Ashley's not quite the same person that she was in the first book. She's not perfect. And Marcia is a little bit more trusting than her friends are. Charlie basically doesn't trust her until deep into the fourth book.
Yeah, I'm with Charlie.
Right. Because when somebody, you know, there's the saying, when someone shows you who they are, believe them, right? But the other side of that is people change. And when you see someone making that effort, then you've kind of got, you know, it doesn't mean forget, but sometimes you do have to forgive. And that's really hard. And that's, you know, that's partly why I did that too, is it's a challenge for the reader. You've got a character that you spent the first book really hating, and now she's starting to come around a little bit. She spends, no, it's not really a spoiler.
Okay.
The majority of the third and fourth book saying, you know, so people will say, you know, is she supposed to be one of the good guys now? And she says, no, but I'm trying, right? And she's not, she's the imperfection that we see, right? There's very few characters in life or in the stories that are evil, right? They're always more or less in between. So I wanted a character who wasn't a good guy. She's not good, but isn't evil either.
Okay.
She's a messed up kid who is going through stuff and ends up taking that out on people the wrong way.
Okay.
And it's a slow journey. Like I said, it takes until senior year before Charlie really trusts her.
Okay, so actually, well, there's two questions I want to ask.
Mm-hmm.
So you already have your idea about what's going to happen in the junior and senior year?
So here's the thing I found out about writing. It's a lot of fun, and it's incredibly addicting, because once I get something in my head, it stays there until I can get it down on paper. So part of it is the world building, coming up with the characters, and I love the characters that I've come up with and the stories and all that. And part of it is the problem solving and the troubleshooting. It's building a puzzle. And that part of it is so addicting to me. I say that to say that I haven't stopped writing since last summer. So I finished that book about a year ago in October. And then by December, I was starting the third book. The third book I finished and published in April. And that summer, I started 4. Book 4, I finished in August. So that means junior year is already done. Senior year is already done. And the way my brain works, I'm thinking a year or two ahead. Like, I already know what's going to happen in the next book and the book after that. Because to keep the story going, what I did is in senior year, I introduced some freshman characters. So that when Marcia and Charlie and Patience graduate, the freshman characters are going to take over the story. But to get, so to give you a hint of how, like, plot-wise, the third book is called Marcia Marches On, and most of the thought and process and stuff for that came up last summer. We had George Floyd, we had all that going on, we had a lot of marches. That's where the title comes from, because there's 2 protest march things that kind of, the same way the first book had 2 speeches that kind of bookended it, one at the beginning, one at the end. There's 2 rally, protest, march type things, both very different experiences for her, that take place in the third year. And because I set up the first book like that, it starts at the beginning of freshman year, ends at the end of freshman year during the summer. That meant that I could make each book a year-long experience. And even though high school was 30 years ago for me, it's, you know, those memories are still fresh enough to where, you know, and what I see with my students, to where, you know, I know what each year felt like. Each year is a different kind of challenge for the kids. And who they are as a person changes and evolves too.
All right, so, and your setting, which is a small town in Indiana, is probably the perfect backdrop for your third book.
Yeah.
Now, so let me understand, your third book is already published?
Yeah, it's already published.
And available on Amazon?
And available on Amazon.
So we need to get some copies for the library.
There you go.
Okay, we'll take care of that.